Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here. Today we're going to be reviewing a Target novel. We're going to be looking at The Smugglers, which of course is the first Doctor's penultimate story and the first story of season 4, and sadly a story that is completely missing, barring a couple snippets here and there. I have seen a couple of the censor clips, like the guy getting stabbed in the back with the knife thrown at him, which I see is from the beginning of the story. I like The Smugglers. It's not memorable, so to speak, but it's a nice slice of life historical where the Doctor ends up in a situation, and then of course they have to get out of the situation, but then they get caught up in events, and then being there does of course change events. It's not like some of the more famous historicals where they don't have maybe as much of an impact. They have a huge impact on this, but it's not like a huge historical event. It's just set in the past historical. Where they're pretty much having to kill time because where the TARDIS landed, when the time comes in, it becomes inaccessible. So they basically have to kill time. They meet a guy who is kind of the church warden of this graveyard. He whispers something into the Doctor's ear, which is kind of a riddle. And then they leave to go to the inn that the guy points them toward. And then right after that, another guy shows up and kills the church warden guy. Now the other guy's an interesting character because he's called Cherub, like that little cherub baby face, because he has kind of a baby face even though he's an older pirate, and he's really good with a knife. He's actually the one who kills the guy with a knife. He actually uses his knife pretty effectively several times in the story. And so the Doctor ends up in this situation where he's got different opposing forces going on at once. Now he has a revenue man, basically a tax man. Well, I don't think that's right either. What they call a revenue man, he's a guy who investigates smuggling to watch for illegal smuggling. Blake is his name. He's pretty cool. I like him. He's actually kind of a good guy in the story. Of course, the Doctor gets separated from Ben and Polly. Ben and Polly get arrested for the church guy's murder, the church warden or whatever he's called. And the Doctor gets taken aboard a pirate ship by Cherub, however you're supposed to pronounce that. And that's where they meet Captain Pike, who's kind of like Captain Hook, but more like, Blackbeard or something. He's a really bad dude. And instead of having like a regular hook on his hand, he has more like a pike, with the spear point, with the hook on the side. And so I guess that's to fit his name, Captain Pike. I guess if you lose a hand, you're just obligated to do that if you have a name like Hook or Pike, The story is really good. It's really hard. I knew after I read it I was going to have a hard time with this review. Uncle Terrence wrote it, and I love to read Uncle Terrence's writings. Terrence Dicks is a fantastic writer. I love a lot of his Target novelizations. So I don't know how much he embellishes it from the original TV version, since I've never listened to the audio of that. But it's a fun read. I really like the Doctor in this. I could just picture Hartnell's voice saying a lot of the lines in there. It feels very like Hartnell's Doctor, like the first Doctor, with the way his dialogue is written. And you very much get the impression that Terrence really got the first Doctor, really understood him as a character. Ben feels like Ben, Polly feels like Polly. It's interesting because everybody thinks Polly is a boy. The way she's dressed and with her hair tucked up under her cap, everybody thinks Polly's a boy, which I find kind of odd, but everybody feels like their proper character. There is a bit where Pike and then Cherub, is that how you say that? I don't know. They kind of go undercover where they're pretending not to be pirates. They're pretending to be smugglers. And that's a big difference. That's a huge distinction in this. Those are two different things. Pirates consider like smugglers beneath them. What's what they call the trade, they consider it beneath them. I don't know why, I just find that interesting. And then they're talking to the squire of the town, who's kind of the magistrate of the town, kind of the leader of the town. He's the law of the town. And the squire is kind of a crooked person who is basically the ringleader of the actual smuggling going on in the area. And Pike and, again, his first mate are pretending to be smugglers. And there's a lot of amusing bits in there where they're kind of, Pike and his first mate are kind of fluffing the squire's ego. Like Pike actually came up with a clever idea but he lets the Squire think he came up with it, and the Squire's like, it's a marvelous idea, wasn't it? And Pike and Sheriff are like, yeah, that's ingenious, you were great. They say it in such flowery, gentlemanly ways that it probably isn't supposed to be funny, and it probably isn't funny if I was listening to the audio, but reading in the novel, I just thought it was hilarious. You know, they would say these very elegant things, you know, that were nice to the Squire, and the Squire would, yes, well, when you have all the brains, you know. I don't know why, but it amused me, and I was laughing about it. And there's actually one point where it's like, you can tell Pike and his first mate are thinking about maybe killing the Squire, and then Pike's kind of like, but, you know, I mean, flattery costs nothing, and we can always, you know, cut his neck later, and at least he would die happy. I probably shouldn't have read that, it's so amusing, but to me it was funny. The Squire at the end, I do like, kind of has a change of heart. It's interesting how sometimes in Doctor Who and in other stuff, you see these villains, but these villains or these bad guys do have kind of their own code, you know, their sense of honor. We see this in Battlefield with Morgase or Morgaine or whatever name she's going by, Arthur's sister, where she's a villain in the story, but she does have that kind of sense of honor, and she has a certain code she lives by. So, and the Squire is kind of like that too. I mean, he does deal in smuggling, and he does trick the revenue man to get Ben and Polly out of the way, or so he thinks. And but when it comes time to where the other guy who's smuggling with him, the innkeeper, wants to, you know, is threatening to kill Ben and Polly to get the doctor to talk, the Squire's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to shed, you know, innocent blood. We're not going to have that. And they basically come to an argument and almost come to blows over it, to the point to where they start threatening, you know, I will see you swing. Well, I'll see you swing, you know, because again, this takes place in like the 1600s, the 17th century. So I like the fact that while the Squire could have gone along with what the innkeeper was suggesting and gotten the doctor to talk, because of course the doctor would have talked if Ben and Polly were threatened, the fact that his own code of ethics was like, no, you know, smuggling is one thing. We're not going to even threaten to hurt innocent people. It's not just the hurting of innocence that bothered him. The mere threat of it he wouldn't have. Because the innkeeper tries to tell him, you know, I'm just going to say we're going to do it. Just enough to get him to talk. And still the Squire was like, no, you're not even going to say you're going to do it. That's a line I won't cross. And the way that he's conversing back is that kind of formal English gentleman speak. So it's interesting to me that the Squire is a bit full of himself. He does have a bit of an ego, and he is a villain in the sense that he is a smuggler, the ringleader of the smugglers, but he still thinks of himself as a gentleman, and he still behaves in the way he believes a gentleman is supposed to behave. Someone with that sense of honor is supposed to behave. And I really like that. And then of course, the innkeeper gets killed, and the Squire gets shot. Not killed, but shot. And even though he's kind of delirious and in a daze, he still says some pretty honorable things, and even ends up saving the doctor at the end when Pike goes to kind of stab the doctor with his pike hand, because he's missing his right hand. He has that pike blade on it. And when he goes to kill him, the Squire, even though he's shot, gets in the way and holds his arms like, no. Which gives Blake time to take out Pike. So it's interesting. The Squire really became an interesting character to me right at the end, just to see that even villains have that line they're not willing to cross, or that code of honor and ethics that they abide by, and that they don't necessarily see themselves as the bad guy. I like a more fleshed out character like that. And while I still don't think he's a fully realized character, I did like that little bit of character development he got at the end. The fight between Pike and his first mate toward the end is done really well in the book. The way it's just written is really well done. Polly gets a few moments to shine. I love when they trick the kind of stable boy character into letting him go by making him think the doctor is a warlock and that there is assistance. That's pretty. But I mean, people, again, back in the 1600s were very superstitious about that kind of stuff. It's a fun little story. Not essential Doctor Who. I tend to like season 4. I would love for this to be animated. Of course, we got the announcement from the Mirror that that The Smugglers is one of the stories supposedly being animated for release. I would love to see that. Of course, then there's also the rumors of missing episodes being found. Most of y'all have heard them by now. And part of the ones people have theorized about are a couple episodes of The Smugglers. We'll see. I take all of that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. But I can say I enjoyed the Target novelization. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as I did like the Space Pirates. But it was a good read. It's one more, at least when I do either watch the animation or if I just watch the reconstruction. Having read the novel first, I'll have a much better idea of what's going on. Watching the recon of Space Pirates, it was a really big help. I'd already read the novel because I knew what happened. And I think that'll be the case here if we turn out not getting the animation and I have to watch all 4 episodes as a recon. Now that I know the events from the book, it'll be much easier to follow so I'm not getting lost or confused. So The Smugglers, I liked it. It was a nice little read. I want to give a shout out to the Flyattractor. I appreciate him sending it. He did send me another package recently, which I very much appreciate. He's been a very strong supporter of the channel. He's sent several packages. He's also one of my patrons on Patreon. One of my original 3 that really hung around for a while, Michael Webster and of course David Hammond and the Flyattractor were kind of my original 3 patrons, and they really got the ball rolling. And without them, I don't know if the Patreon would have grown the way it has. So I'm always grateful to all of them. And Flyattractor is still with me there, and I very much appreciate his continued support. If there's anything you would like to send me, my P.O. box is down in the description below. I also have, as I just mentioned, a Patreon. There's a link to that down in the description below as well. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Stephen Crane, Colin Coney, and Finn Perkins. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. It makes a big difference, especially lately. That really has helped me keep the bills paid, so I'm very grateful to all of them. I also have a link to my Amazon wish list there as well, if anyone would like to check that out. I have added a couple things to that recently. I added The Prisoner to that recently. That's another one I've been meaning to get that I would love to do reviews for, because I've only seen a handful of episodes of The Prisoner, and I love Patrick McGowan. He's in several episodes of Columbo. He's in 4 episodes of Columbo, and you guys know I love Columbo, so I have a huge fondness for Patrick McGowan, so I just added that recently. And I would also appreciate if you just click the like button and the subscribe button. That is a big help and is also much appreciated. Most importantly, though, thank you for watching.